The Last Straw, Chapter 1. 9 Years of Silence. The hum of fluorescent lights was the soundtrack of Madison Bradford's life. They buzzed overhead like restless bees, casting a pale glow on the gray cubicle walls that had become her prison. She sat at her desk, fingers flying across the keyboard, correcting yet another invoice Greg had botched. Greg, her boss, the office manager, was in his glass-walled office, laughing loudly on the phone as if he didn't have a care in the world. Madison's jaw tightened. She'd spent 9 years in this company, clawing her way up from the front desk to this administrative assistant role. 9 years of loyalty, of late nights and skipped lunches, and what did she have to show for it? A paycheck that barely covered rent and a boss who treated her like a human eraser for his mistakes. Madison, Greg's voice cracked through the air like a whip. She looked up, forcing a neutral expression. Yes. He strode out, waving a sheet of paper like a victory flag. This invoice, why didn't you catch this before it went out? The client's furious. Madison blinked. She had caught it. She had fixed it. She had emailed him about it yesterday. But Greg never read her emails. I did catch it, she said evenly. I sent you the correction. Greg frowned, as if her words were an inconvenience. Well, they're blaming me, which means I'm blaming you. You've got to stay on top of these things. Her throat burned with words she couldn't say. Instead, she nodded, because that's what Madison Bradford did. She nodded and swallowed her pride. When the clock finally hit 5, Madison slipped out like a ghost. The autumn air was crisp, carrying the scent of fallen leaves and distant wood smoke. She drove without a destination, letting the road decide for her. Miles later, she saw it, a splash of color against the gray of an abandoned parking lot. A farmer's market, tucked beneath the rusting skeleton of an old drive-in theater. The marquee still clung to faded letters announcing a movie that hadn't played in 20 years. Madison parked and stepped out. The air smelled of fresh bread and earth, of apples and cinnamon. Stalls lined the cracked pavement, overflowing with honey jars, handmade soaps, vegetables still dusted with soil. People laughed, bartered, tasted samples. It felt like another world, warm, alive, unhurried. She wandered, letting the chatter and color wash over her, until she collided, literally, with someone. Oh, I'm so sorry, Madison exclaimed, steadying a crate of tomatoes before it toppled. No harm done, said the man, smiling. He had sun-browned skin, strong hands, and eyes the color of summer storms. Beside him stood a little girl with pigtails, clutching a stuffed rabbit. Madison crouched slightly. Hi there. The girl peeked out shyly. Hi. That's when Madison noticed the flyer tucked under the man's arm. Help wanted, greenhouse assistant. Food and board included. Her heart gave a strange, hopeful lurch. Chapter 2. The Forgotten Drive-In. Madison straightened, brushing a stray lock of hair from her face. The man balanced the crate easily now, his smile warm and unhurried, the kind of smile that belonged to someone who didn't live by deadlines and email chains. Really? I'm sorry, Madison said again, feeling oddly flustered. I wasn't paying attention. No harm done, he repeated, his voice calm, carrying a hint of amusement. Crowds can sneak up on you. The little girl tugged at his sleeve. Daddy, can we get honey sticks? Soon, Sophia, he said gently, then looked back at Madison. You're not from around here, are you? Madison shook her head. Just wandering. She hesitated, then nodded toward the flyer under his arm. Greenhouse assistant? His brows lifted, surprised she'd noticed. Yeah, I run a small greenhouse about 15 minutes from here. Mostly herbs and vegetables. It's a lot of work for one person, and Sophie is not quite old enough to help with the heavy lifting. He smiled down at his daughter, who grinned back, missing one front tooth. Madison felt something stir inside her, a mix of curiosity and longing. A greenhouse. Dirt under her nails instead of toner smudges. Air that smelled like basil instead of burnt coffee. What kind of work? She asked, trying to sound casual. Planting, watering, harvesting. Some organizing. It's not glamorous, but it's honest. He shifted the crate to his other arm. Comes with food and board. I've got a spare room. It's simple living. Madison laughed softly, though it sounded more like a sigh. Simple sounds pretty good right now. He studied her for a moment, as if weighing something. I'm Zachery, he said finally, extending a hand. Madison. Her fingers met his, warm, calloused, steady. A stark contrast to Greg's limp, clammy handshake that always felt like a warning. Sophia peeked out from behind Zachary's leg. Hi, Madison, she said shyly. Madison crouched again, smiling. Hi, Sophia. Honey sticks sound amazing. Sophia giggled, and Madison felt her heart soften in a way it hadn't in years. Zachery handed her the flyer. Think about it. No pressure. If you're interested, the address and number are there. Madison took the paper, its edges crisp against her fingers. She slipped it into her bag like a secret. As she wandered through the rest of the market, sampling apple cider and admiring jars of wildflower honey, her mind kept circling back to that flyer. To Zachary's steady gaze. To Sophia's innocent smile. To the idea of waking up somewhere that didn't smell like toner and resentment. By the time Madison drove home, the flyer was on the passenger seat, staring up at her like a promise. Chapter 3. Cracks in the Foundation. Monday arrived like a storm Madison couldn't outrun. The office smelled faintly of burnt coffee and stale air, a scent that clung to her clothes like regret. She walked in, clutching her travel mug like a shield, and immediately sensed something was off. The usual hum of printers and keyboards was drowned out by hushed voices, heads bent together like conspirators. Greg stood in the center of the room, grinning like he'd just won the lottery. Madison's stomach tightened. Big news, everyone. His voice boomed. Too cheerful for a Monday. The company's been sold. New ownership, new structure, new opportunities. Madison froze mid-step. Sold? Her pulse quickened as Greg waved a stack of memos like a magician about to pull a rabbit from a hat. Restructuring starts immediately, he continued. Some roles will shift. Some pay scales will adjust. It's all for the greater good. Madison's throat went dry. She reached her desk, sat down, and tried to breathe. Her inbox pinged. A new email marked urgent. She clicked it, and the words blurred before her eyes. Effective immediately. Your position has been reclassified. You are reassigned to entry-level clerical duties. Compensation adjusted accordingly. Her heart slammed against her ribs. Entry-level. After 9 years. After every late night, every weekend email, every sacrifice. And the pay cut. She didn't need to calculate it to know it would gut her already fragile budget. Greg sauntered over, memo in hand, his grin still plastered on like bad wallpaper. Tough break, huh? But hey, you'll still have a job. That's something. Madison stared at him, words boiling up like lava. A job. Her voice cracked, sharp and trembling. After 9 years of fixing your mistakes, covering for you, doing work you couldn't even understand, you're telling me I should be grateful for a pay cut and a demotion? Greg blinked, taken aback. Madison, it's not personal. It's policy. Policy. She laughed, a brittle, broken sound. Policy didn't sit in this office every night fixing invoices you screwed up. Policy didn't swallow every insult you threw my way. Heads turned. The room had gone silent, the kind of silence that feeds on drama. Madison didn't care. She was past caring. You know what? Her voice steadied, cold and clear. Keep your policy. Keep your company. I'm done. Greg's mouth opened, but Madison didn't wait for the excuses. She grabbed her bag, her keys, and walked out, heels clicking like gunshots on the tile. The glass doors swung shut behind her, and for the first time in 9 years, she felt air that didn't taste like defeat. Outside, the sky was a hard, brilliant blue. Madison stood in the parking lot, trembling, not with fear, but with something wilder. Freedom, rage, possibility. She slid into her car, hands gripping the wheel, and stared at the passenger seat. The flyer lay there, crisp and waiting. Help wanted, greenhouse assistant. Food and board included. Madison exhaled, long and shaky. Maybe this was madness. Maybe it was salvation. Either way, she was done being invisible. She turned the key, and the engine roared like applause. Chapter 4, Leap of Faith. Madison didn't sleep much that night. She lay in bed staring at the ceiling, replaying every word Greg had said, every humiliation she'd swallowed over the years. 9 years of loyalty, and all she had to show for it was a pink slip disguised as a reclassification. Her apartment felt smaller than ever, walls closing in, air stale with the scent of old coffee and takeout. She turned on her side, eyes landing on the flyer resting on her nightstand. Help wanted, greenhouse assistant. Food and board included. She picked it up, tracing the bold letters with her thumb. It felt like a lifeline, like something solid in a world that had just crumbled beneath her feet. By morning, Madison had made her decision, not with logic, but with instinct. She packed a duffel bag with jeans, boots, and the few things that mattered. Her grandmother's quilt, a worn journal, and the photo of her parents smiling on a summer day long gone. The drive was quiet, the kind of quiet that hums with possibility. Autumn leaves blazed along the roadside, fiery reds and golds swirling in the wind. Madison gripped the wheel, heart pounding like a drumbeat of change. When she turned down the gravel road listed on the flyer, the world seemed to exhale. Rolling fields stretched wide, kissed by sunlight. At the end of the lane stood a modest farmhouse with peeling white paint and a porch that sagged like an old smile. Behind it, a greenhouse shimmered in the morning light, glass panels glinting like jewels, rows of greens spilling out in neat lines. Madison parked, her tires crunching on gravel. For a moment, she just sat there, staring. This wasn't the sterile hum of fluorescent lights. This was earth and sky, and air that smelled like rain. The screen door creaked open, and Zachery stepped out, wiping his hands on a rag. He wore faded jeans and a flannel shirt, sleeves rolled to his elbows. His smile was the same, steady, unhurried. You came, he said simply. Madison climbed out, nerves fluttering like moths in her chest. I hope I'm not too early. Early's good. He nodded toward the greenhouse. Plenty to do. Sophia appeared behind him, clutching her stuffed rabbit, her pigtails bouncing as she ran down the steps. Madison, she squealed, as if they were old friends. Madison laughed, the sound surprising even herself. Hi, Sophia. Zachery led her toward the greenhouse, his voice calm as he explained the work, watering schedules, planting beds, the rhythm of life here. Madison listened, drinking in every word, every scent of damp soil and green leaves. When he showed her the spare room, a small space with a quilted bedspread and a window overlooking the fields, Madison felt something inside her settle. It wasn't luxury. It wasn't status. But it was hers. She turned to Zachery, heart thudding. I'll take it, she said. His smile deepened, slow and genuine. Welcome home, Madison. And for the first time in years, the words didn't feel like a lie. Chapter 5. Roots and Renewal. Madison woke to sunlight spilling through the small window, painting golden stripes across the quilted bedspread. For a moment, she lay still, listening. No hum of fluorescent lights. No clatter of keyboards. Just the soft rustle of leaves outside and the distant chirp of birds. She dressed in jeans and boots, tying her hair back before stepping onto the porch. The air was cool and clean, carrying the scent of damp earth. Zachery was already in the greenhouse, sleeves rolled up, hands deep in soil. Sophia sat nearby on an overturned bucket, humming to her stuffed rabbit as she arranged tiny pots in a neat row. "Morning," Madison called, her voice tentative. Zachery glanced up, his smile easy. "Morning. Hope you're ready to get your hands dirty." Madison laughed nervously. "I think so." The greenhouse was warm and alive, glass panels catching the sun like shards of light. Rows of herbs and vegetables stretched out in orderly lines. Basil, thyme, tomatoes heavy on the vine. The air smelled of green things and possibility. Zachery handed her a pair of gloves. "Start with watering. These trays need a good soak." Madison nodded, gripping the hose like a lifeline. The first spray of water darkened the soil, releasing a rich, earthy scent that clung to her skin. It was harder than she expected, bending, lifting, hauling, but there was a rhythm to it, a quiet honesty that soothed something raw inside her. By midday, her muscles ached, and sweat dampened her shirt. She sat on the porch steps, gulping water from a mason jar, watching Sophia chase butterflies across the yard. The child's laughter rang like bells, pure and unfiltered, and Madison felt something loosen in her chest. "You did good," Zachery said, settling beside her with 2 glasses of iced tea. His presence was steady, like the land itself. First days always the hardest. Madison smiled faintly, fingers curling around the cool glass. "It's different, but in a good way." He nodded, eyes crinkling at the corners. "Give it time. You'll find your rhythm." That night, Madison lay in bed, muscles sore, but spirit strangely light. She opened her journal, pen hovering over the page before words spilled out. "Today, I worked with my hands. I smelled basil and rain. I laughed with a child. For the first time in years, I didn't feel invisible." She closed the journal, heart steady. Maybe this wasn't just a job. Maybe it was the beginning of something she didn't even know she'd been searching for. Chapter 6. Ghosts of the Past. The days had begun to feel softer, like the edges of her life were finally rounding out. Madison woke with the sun, worked with her hands, laughed with Sophia, and ended her evenings sipping tea on the porch while the sky blushed into twilight. For the first time in years, she felt something close to peace. Until the phone rang. It was late, the farmhouse quiet except for the hum of crickets outside. Madison glanced at the screen and froze. Carla, office. Her old coworker. Her thumb hovered over the decline button, but curiosity won. "Hello." Her voice was cautious, almost brittle. "Madison." Carla's tone was bright, too bright. "You won't believe what's happening. The new owners? They're shaking everything up. Greg." She laughed, a sharp, incredulous sound. "Greg's been promoted. Regional manager now. Big salary bump, corner office. Can you imagine?" Madison's stomach twisted like a wrung cloth. Greg, promoted. The man who couldn't manage an invoice without her help was now climbing higher while she was here. In borrowed boots, smelling of soil. Carla kept talking, words tumbling like stones. "They're hiring college grads left and right. It's all about degrees now. Honestly, you dodged a bullet. But still, crazy, right?" Madison forced a laugh that tasted like ash. "Yeah, crazy." When the call ended, silence pressed in like a weight. Madison stared at the darkened window, her reflection ghostly against the glass. Doubt crept in, sharp and relentless. Had she made a mistake? Was she foolish to trade a steady paycheck for this fragile dream? She imagined Greg in his new office, smug and secure, while she knelt in dirt, her nails rimmed with soil. The old voice in her head whispered, "You walked away from everything. You threw it all away." Madison stepped outside, needing air. The night was velvet and cool, stars scattered like spilled salt. The greenhouse glowed faintly in the moonlight, rows of green breathing in the dark. She hugged herself, trying to quiet the storm inside. Footsteps crunched on gravel. Zachery appeared, his presence calm as ever, carrying the scent of earth and wood smoke. "Couldn't sleep?" he asked gently. Madison shook her head, forcing a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Just thinking." He studied her for a moment, then sat beside her on the porch steps. "Thinking's good, but don't let old ghosts steal what you've built today." Madison blinked, startled by the truth in his words. "How did you?" "I've seen that look before," he said simply. "You're wondering if you made the right choice." Her throat tightened. "I spent 9 years trying to matter. And now Greg." Her voice cracked, raw and trembling. "He's thriving. And I'm here." Zachary's gaze was steady, grounding her like roots in soil. "Thriving isn't the same as living. You're here, Madison. You're breathing fresh air. You're building something real. That counts for more than titles." Madison swallowed hard, tears burning behind her eyes. "But what if I fail? What if I'm not cut out for this?" Zachary's voice softened, carrying the weight of quiet conviction. "Failure isn't the end. It's just another beginning. You've already done the hardest part. You walked away from what was breaking you." Sophia's laughter drifted from inside, sweet and unguarded, as if punctuating his words. Madison felt the tension in her chest ease, just a little. She looked at Zachery, at the quiet strength in his eyes, and realized something. Maybe she hadn't lost. Maybe she'd finally begun to win. Chapter 7, Seeds of Change. Morning sunlight spilled across the greenhouse, turning dew into diamonds. Madison knelt among rows of basil, her fingers brushing tender leaves. She had grown used to the rhythm now, the soft hiss of the watering hose, the earthy perfume rising from damp soil. It was work that left her muscles aching, but the ache felt honest, earned. Sophia darted between the rows like a butterfly in sneakers, her laughter ringing bright. Madison, look! She held up a tiny sprout in a clay pot, her face glowing with pride. Madison smiled, crouching to admire it. That's beautiful, Sophia. You've got a green thumb. Sophia giggled. Daddy says plants like when you talk to them. Can you tell this one a story? Madison laughed softly. A story? About what? About you, Sophia said, eyes wide with innocent curiosity. Madison hesitated, words catching in her throat. Her story wasn't one she liked to tell. 9 years of being invisible, of swallowing pride until it burned. But Sophia's gaze was pure, expectant, and something inside Madison softened. Well, she began slowly. Once there was a girl who worked in a big office. She thought if she worked hard enough, she'd be happy. But the office didn't care about her. So one day, she left and found a place where things grow instead of break. Sophia clapped her hands. That's a good story. Daddy says you're brave. Madison blinked, startled. He said that. Sophia nodded solemnly, as if sharing a great secret. He said you're strong, like the roots of the big trees. Warmth bloomed in Madison's chest, unexpected and tender. She glanced toward Zachery, who was stacking crates near the far end of the greenhouse. His movements were steady, deliberate, like someone who understood the language of patience. When he looked up and caught her gaze, something passed between them, quiet, unspoken, but real. Later, over lunch at the farmhouse table, Madison shared an idea that had been simmering in her mind. What if we set up a little stand at the farmer's market? Fresh herbs, maybe some homemade teas. People love that kind of thing. Zachery listened, his eyes thoughtful. That could work, he said slowly. We've never done much beyond selling to locals, but you've got a good head for organization. Madison felt a flicker of pride, different from the hollow praise Greg used to toss her way like scraps. This was real, rooted in respect. Sophia bounced in her chair. Can I help? I can make signs. With flowers and butterflies. Madison laughed, the sound light and free. I think that's the most important job. As the afternoon stretched on, Madison and Zachery worked side by side, planning layouts and jotting ideas on scraps of paper. Their conversation flowed easily, about soil and seasons, about life and second chances. Every so often, Sophia would burst in with a drawing or a question, her presence weaving them closer like threads in a tapestry. When the sun dipped low and painted the fields in amber, Madison stood on the porch, watching Zachery carry Sophia on his shoulders, her laughter spilling into the dusk. Something stirred deep inside her, a feeling she hadn't dared name in years. Not just belonging, not just peace. Hope. Chapter 8. Harvest. The farmer's market buzzed with life, just as it had the day Madison first stumbled upon it. Only this time, she wasn't wandering aimlessly. She was standing behind a wooden stall draped in burlap, jars of fresh herbs and bundles of fragrant basil neatly arranged in rows. Hand-painted signs, Sophia's handiwork, fluttered in the autumn breeze, adorned with butterflies and flowers. Daddy, look. Sophia tugged at Zachery's sleeve, pointing to a customer holding a jar of rosemary. They like our plants. Zachery smiled, his hand resting lightly on Madison's shoulder. They like your idea, he said quietly. Madison felt warmth bloom in her chest. The stand had been her vision, born from a spark of hope and nurtured by long evenings planning with Zachery. Now, seeing people smile as they sampled teas and tucked herbs into their baskets, it felt like proof. Proof that she could build something real. As the day wound down and the crowd thinned, Madison began packing up the remaining jars. Her muscles ached, but it was the good kind of ache, the kind that came from purpose. Zachery lifted a crate into the truck, his movements easy, strong. Sophia danced around them, humming a tune only she knew. When the last box was loaded, Zachery turned to Madison, his expression softer than she'd ever seen. You've done more than help, he said. You've changed things here. Madison swallowed, her throat tight. I just wanted to feel like I mattered. You do, he said simply. His voice carried no grand gestures, no polished promises, just truth, steady and grounding. Not because of what you do, because of who you are. The words hit her like sunlight breaking through clouds. For years, she'd chased validation in titles and paychecks, only to find it here, in a quiet voice, in a place where roots ran deep. Sophia bounded up, clutching a wildflower bouquet. Madison, these are for you, she declared, thrusting the blooms into Madison's hands. Daddy says flowers make people happy. Madison knelt, hugging the little girl tightly. They do, she whispered, blinking back tears. You make me happy too. When she looked up, Zachery was watching her, something unspoken flickering in his eyes. The space between them felt charged, alive. Madison rose slowly, her heart pounding, not with fear, but with something wilder, sweeter. Zachery stepped closer, his hand brushing hers as he took the bouquet to steady it. You belong here, he murmured. Madison met his gaze, And for the first time in years, she didn't feel invisible. She felt seen, completely, irrevocably seen. The kiss, when it came, was gentle, like the first drop of rain on parched earth. Sophia giggled and clapped her hands, her laughter ringing like bells in the fading light. And in that moment, amid wildflowers and autumn wind, Madison realized something she never expected. Sometimes, life doesn't break you. Sometimes, it bends you toward where you were meant to grow. Epilogue, Madison's journal, October 25th. I used to measure my worth in emails answered, invoices corrected, hours spent under fluorescent lights. 9 years of chasing approval that never came. 9 years of believing that if I worked hard enough, someone would see me. Today, I stood in a greenhouse with soil under my nails and sunlight on my face. I sold herbs at a market where people smiled, not because of a title on a business card, but because of something I grew with my own hands. Sophia gave me wildflowers, and Zachery looked at me like I was more than a shadow in someone else's office. I thought walking away was failure, but maybe failure was staying in a place that broke me. Maybe leaving was the bravest thing I've ever done. I don't know what tomorrow holds, but tonight, I know this. I am not invisible. I am rooted. I am growing. And for the first time in years, I feel like I'm home. Afterward, 1 year later, it's been 12 months since I walked out of that office for the last time. 12 months since I traded fluorescent lights for sunlight, spreadsheets for soil, and silence for laughter. The greenhouse is thriving now. What started as rows of basil and thyme has grown into a small empire of green, herbs, vegetables, even flowers that Sophia insists on planting just because they're pretty. Our stand at the farmer's market has become a favorite. People come not just for the produce, but for the teas we brew, the jams we make, and the sense of community that blooms around our little table. Zachery and I, we've built more than a business. We've built a life. It's not perfect. There are days when storms flatten rows of seedlings, when bills pile up, when exhaustion weighs heavy. But it's ours, real and rooted. Sophia calls me Maddie now, and sometimes, when she falls asleep on my shoulder after a long day, I think about the woman I was a year ago, the one who believed her worth was measured in promotions and paychecks. I barely recognize her. I've learned something in this year. Growth isn't always upward. Sometimes it's inward. Sometimes it's finding the courage to plant yourself in new soil and trust that you'll bloom. And I have, in ways I never imagined.